The distinct sound of shattering crystal cut through the air. It was followed immediately by a scream that sounded less like human distress and more like a theatrical performance of grief in a bad opera. I squeezed my eyes shut and pressed the mute button on my laptop. On my screen sat 3 serious faces from the Tokyo office. We were in the middle of a quarterly budget review for a global product launch I was managing. The numbers were tight. The deadline was tighter. But right now, the most pressing crisis in my life was not the $2 million deficit in the marketing spreadsheet. It was the color of a flower petal in suburban Connecticut. I was 32 years old. I managed complex international logistics for a Fortune 500 company. Yet here I was hiding in my mother's walk-in pantry, surrounded by 50 pounds of organic quinoa and artisanal olive oil, pretending that I was not having a panic attack. The scream came again. "Excuse me for one moment," I said to the camera with my best professional smile. "I am having a slight connectivity issue. I will be right back." I turned off the video and ripped the headset off my ears. I opened the pantry door and walked into the war zone. My mother's house was transformed. Every year, Eleanor hosted the Winter Solstice Charity Gala. It was the event of the season in our town. It was the night where the wealthy residents drank too much champagne and wrote tax-deductible checks to prove they were good people. The theme was always the same: Winter Wonderland. The foyer was draped in white silk. The banister was wrapped in frosted pine garlands. It looked pristine. It looked expensive. It looked perfect. Except for the massive cardboard boxes sitting in the center of the marble floor and the woman weeping dramatically next to them. Eleanor stood there in her silk robe. Her hair was still in rollers. She pointed a manicured finger at the open box as if it contained a severed head. "Look at this, Harper," she wailed. "Just look at it." I walked over and peered inside. Roses. Deep red, blood-red velvet roses. Hundreds of them. "They are red," I said flatly. "Of course they are red," she snapped. "That is the problem. The theme is Winter Wonderland, Harper. Winter, snow, ice, purity. Does this look like purity to you? It looks like a Valentine's Day massacre." She turned to the terrified delivery boy who looked like he was about 16 years old and regretting every life choice that led him to this moment. "Take them away," she hissed at him. "Get them out of my sight." "But ma'am," the boy stammered. "The order said red. I have the invoice right here." Eleanor did not look at the invoice. She looked at the grandfather clock in the hall. "Guests arrive in 30 minutes, she whispered. Her voice trembled with a terrifying fragility. 30 minutes, Harper. The mayor is coming. The head of the hospital board is coming, and I have no centerpieces." She brought a hand to her forehead and swayed slightly. "I am going to faint," she announced. "I can feel it. My heart cannot take this humiliation. I am going to pass out right here on the floor, and when the guests arrive, they will find my body surrounded by these hideous red weeds." She was not going to faint. She never fainted. But she was definitely going to make this my problem. "Mom, stop it," I said. "Let me see the invoice." I took the paper from the boy. It was signed in my mother's looping, chaotic handwriting. She had indeed checked the box for red roses. She had been too busy looking at herself in the mirror behind the counter to read the form. I knew this because I knew her. "This is your signature, Mom," I said. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Do not defend him," she snapped. "Fix it." I looked at my watch. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. The florist closed at 5. The gala started at 5. I had exactly 20 minutes before the Tokyo team expected me back on the call to finalize the budget. "I do not have time for this," I said. "I am in a meeting, a work meeting." Eleanor let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "Oh, your meeting," she said. "Your little computer call. Is that more important than your mother's reputation? Is that more important than the charity? Think of the children, Harper." The charity was for a local art museum, but Eleanor always acted like she was saving orphans from a burning building. "Please," she said, and her voice dropped to that dangerous whisper again. "Please do not let me look like a fool." I looked at the red roses. I looked at the terrified delivery boy. I looked at my mother, who was already rehearsing her victim speech for when the guests arrived. If I did not fix this, she would talk about it for the next 10 years. It would become the Christmas of the Red Rose disaster, and it would somehow be my fault because I was in the pantry instead of supervising the delivery. "Fine," I said. "Give me the phone." I did not call the local florist shop number. That would be useless. Instead, I pulled out my personal cell phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Stefan. He was the owner of the largest luxury floral distributor in the tri-state area. We had worked together on a product launch in Manhattan 6 months ago where I helped him avoid a lawsuit over a venue breach. He owed me a favor. I dialed. He picked up on the second ring. "Harper," he said. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Emergency," I said. "I'm at my mother's house in Connecticut, zip code 06880. I need 500 stems of white hydrangeas, not roses, hydrangeas. And I need white lilies, whatever white inventory you have in the vans." "Harper, you are crazy," he said. "It is rush hour." "I need them in 20 minutes, Stefan," I said. "I know you have a truck doing the delivery for the country club wedding down the street. I saw the schedule on Instagram. Divert the driver." There was a pause. I could hear him typing. "That is a double rush fee," he said. "Triple it," I said. "Just get them here, and tell the driver to take the red roses away." "Done," he said. I hung up. Eleanor was watching me with wide eyes. "They will be here in 15 minutes, I said. "Go put your dress on." I turned back to the delivery boy. "Wait outside on the porch," I told him. "A van is coming to swap the inventory. Do not speak to anyone. Do not look at anyone. Just wait." I marched back into the pantry and put my headset back on. I took a deep breath and turned the camera on. "Apologies, everyone," I said smoothly to the Tokyo team. "We had a minor facility issue, but it is resolved. Let us look at line item 42. For the next 20 minutes, I lived a double life. In my left ear, I heard the muted chaos of the hallway as Stefan's team arrived like a SWAT team. I heard the rustle of leaves and the clinking of vases. I heard my mother barking orders at men who were moving faster than humanly possible. In my right ear, I heard the drone of financial projections. I typed numbers into the spreadsheet while watching the door crack open. I saw a flash of white petals. The red roses were gone. The white hydrangeas were flowing into the foyer like a snowdrift. By the time I closed the laptop and ended the meeting, the house was silent. I rubbed my temples. My head was pounding. I had saved the company $200,000 in logistics costs, and I had saved my mother's social standing in the same half hour. I stood up and smoothed down my oversized gray sweater. I had been wearing pajama bottoms and fuzzy socks below the desk, but at least I had put on a bra. I walked out of the pantry. The transformation was complete. The house smelled of expensive pine candles and fresh lilies. The lighting was dimmed to a golden glow. A string quartet was playing softly in the corner of the living room. Waiters in black tie were circulating with trays of champagne. And there was Eleanor. She stood at the bottom of the grand staircase. She was wearing a silver sequined gown that cost more than my first car. Her hair was coiffed into a perfect helmet of blonde perfection. She held a crystal flute of champagne, and she was laughing lightly at something the mayor was saying. I watched from the shadows of the hallway. "Oh, Eleanor, it is simply breathtaking," a woman in a red velvet dress said. She was the president of the garden club. "I have never seen such exquisite hydrangeas. The white is so striking." Eleanor smiled. It was a smile of pure benevolence. "Thank you, darling," she said. "You know I just had a vision. Everyone does red for Christmas. It is so cliché. I wanted something ethereal, something spiritual. I told the florist that if they brought me a single red petal, I would send the whole truck back. One must have standards." The group nodded in admiration. "She is a genius," the mayor said. "A true artist." I felt a cold, heavy stone settle in my stomach. Not a word about the panic, not a word about the mistake, and certainly not a word about the daughter who had called in a professional favor to fix her mess. I walked forward. I just wanted a glass of water and maybe a nod, just a tiny acknowledgement that I existed. Eleanor saw me approach. Her smile did not fade, but her eyes changed. They went from warm and inviting to cold and critical in a split second. She excused herself from the mayor and glided over to me. She blocked my path before I could enter the main room. She looked me up and down. I was wearing the same gray sweater and black leggings I had worn for my meeting. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun because I had not had time to wash it in 3 days. "Hello, Mom," I said. "The flowers look good." "They are adequate," she said. "The lilies are opening a bit too wide, but it will have to do." She took a sip of her champagne and then gestured vaguely at my chest with her glass. "Are you staying down here?" she asked. "I thought I would say hello to Dad," I said, "and maybe get some food. I have not eaten since breakfast." Eleanor let out a small sigh, the kind of sigh one makes when a child spills juice on a white carpet. "Well, try to stand behind the pillars," she said. "We have photographers here tonight, Harper." She reached out and plucked a piece of lint off my shoulder. "Con, you are wearing that?" she asked. "To a formal event." "I am not at the event, Mom," I said. "I live here. Remember, I am just getting water." She shook her head. Her gaze was not angry. It was pitiful, which was worse. "You know Mrs. Robinson's daughter is here," she said. "She is wearing a beautiful green silk dress. She just got engaged to a neurosurgeon." I bit the inside of my cheek. I tasted blood. "That is nice for her," I said. Eleanor leaned in close. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and judgment. "Maybe if you put a little effort in, Harper," she whispered. "Maybe if you did not walk around looking like a refugee in your own home, you would not be alone. No wonder you are still single. Who would want to come home to this?" She gestured at my outfit again. I felt the air leave my lungs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I made 6 figures. I wanted to tell her that I had just negotiated a global contract. I wanted to tell her that the only reason she was standing there looking like a queen was because I knew how to clean up her messes. But I did not. I had been trained well. I was the good daughter. I was the fixer. I was the sponge that absorbed her toxicity so she could shine. "I am going upstairs," I said. "Good idea," she said brightly. She patted my cheek. Her hand was cold. "Oh, and Harper." I stopped on the first step. "Check the oven," she said. "The caterer is running behind on the appetizers. I need you to plate the scallops in 10 minutes. Use the silver trays, not the ceramic ones." She turned her back on me and walked back into the party. I stood there for a moment watching her. I watched her laugh. I watched her charm the room. I watched her accept the praise for the winter wonderland I had built. I gripped the banister until my knuckles turned white. 10 minutes, I whispered to the empty stairwell. I walked up the stairs. I did not go to my room. I went to the guest bathroom and locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror. The gray sweater, the messy hair, the tired eyes. "No wonder you are single." The words echoed in the tiled room. They dug into the soft parts of my confidence like shards of glass. I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face. I needed to numb the sting. I had to go back down. I had to plate the scallops. I had to be the good daughter, because that was my job. That was the only currency I had in this house. Usefulness. If I stopped being useful, I would disappear completely. I dried my face with a plush guest towel. I took a deep breath. I unlocked the door. I did not know it then, but this was the beginning of the end. The cracks were already there. But tonight, under the weight of 500 white hydrangeas and one careless insult, the foundation finally began to give way. I went downstairs to the kitchen. I found the scallops. I found the silver trays. I worked. I served. I disappeared. And Eleanor shone like a diamond. 7 days had passed since the incident with the red roses. 7 days of silence from my mother, followed by a sudden barrage of demands that arrived in my inbox like missile strikes. I was back in my apartment in Los Angeles. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The air outside was a crisp 60 degrees, but inside my home office the temperature felt feverish. My dual monitors were glowing with the blue light of corporate obligation and familial servitude. On the left screen was the launch strategy for the Tokyo project. The budget gap I had closed during the flower crisis had reopened due to a shipping tariff change. I had exactly 3 hours to restructure the entire logistics chain before a presentation to the senior vice president. My career hung on this document. On the right screen was the spreadsheet. I called it the spreadsheet, But in reality, it was a master plan that rivaled the invasion of Normandy in its complexity. It contained every micro detail of the family Christmas. My mother liked to believe that Christmas magic just happened. She thought elves came in the night to coordinate dietary restrictions and flight arrivals. I was the elf. I scrolled down to row 412. Task Uncle James. Arrival. Uncle James was a man who refused to download the airline application on his phone because he believed it was government spyware. This meant I had to manually check him in exactly 24 hours before his flight to ensure he got an aisle seat. If he got a middle seat, he would spend the entire holiday complaining about his sciatica and somehow blame me for the geometry of the aircraft. I typed his confirmation number into the airline website while simultaneously messaging my assistant about the Tokyo tariff codes. Task Aunt Sarah. Menu. I switched tabs to the catering order. Aunt Sarah had recently decided she was allergic to gluten. She was not actually allergic. I had seen her eat a baguette in a parking lot 3 weeks ago. However, if there was a single crouton in her salad on Christmas Eve, she would stage a medical emergency that would suck the oxygen out of the room. I added a note to the grocery list for gluten-free crackers that cost $12 a box and tasted like compressed sawdust. Task Secret Santa. Algorithm. This was the hardest part. My family was a minefield of grudges. Cousin Mike could not draw his ex-wife's new husband. Grandma could not draw Cousin Mike because she forgot to buy a gift last year and gave him a half-used candle. I had written a literal code to ensure the randomization did not result in a fistfight. I rubbed my eyes. My head was throbbing. The coffee in my mug was cold and had a film on top. I took a sip anyway. I needed the caffeine to survive the next 3 hours. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother. It was a picture of her looking radiant at a garden party. The word Mom flashed beneath it. My stomach dropped. It was a physical reaction. My body knew that this call was not going to be a pleasant inquiry about my health. It was going to be a task. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I knew the protocol. If I did not answer, she would call Caleb. Then Caleb would call me and tell me I was upsetting Mom. Then my father would text me a sad emoji. It was easier to just answer the phone and accept the assignment. I put on my headset. "Hello, Mom," I said. There was no greeting. There was only the breathless excitement of a woman who had just spent money she did not have. "Harper, you need to get in the car right now," she said. I froze. My fingers hovered over the Tokyo budget spreadsheet. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I am working Mom." "It is 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. I just won the lot," she said. "It is a miracle, a complete miracle. I was bidding on the online estate sale for the Vanderbilt property in Pasadena. I did not think I would get it, but the other bidder dropped out at the last second." I closed my eyes. "What did you buy?" I asked. "The Royal Doulton Vintage China Set," she said. "The 1902 series with the gold rim." "Harper, it is magnificent. It serves 20 people. It is exactly what we need for the Christmas dinner. The current plates are scratched and frankly embarrassing. We have 3 sets of china, Mom," I said. "We do not need more plates." "You do not understand luxury," she snapped. "These are heirlooms." But here is the problem. The auction house has a strict policy, immediate pickup only. They close at 5. You need to drive to Pasadena and get them. I looked at the clock. I looked at the traffic map on my browser. Pasadena was 25 miles away. In Los Angeles, traffic at 2 in the afternoon, that was a 90-minute drive one way. "Mom," I said slowly, "I cannot do that." "Of course you can," she said. "It is just Pasadena. It is practically in your backyard." "It is not in my backyard," I said. "It is a 3-hour round trip minimum. I have a major presentation in 3 hours. My boss is waiting for these numbers. I cannot leave my desk." There was a silence on the other end. It was the silence of a woman who had never worked a corporate job in her life and viewed employment as a hobby that distracted from her needs. "Harper, this is a once-in-a-lifetime find," she said. Her voice took on that sharp edge. "Do you want me to lose the deposit? Do you want me to lose the plates?" "I want you to hire a courier," I said. "A courier," she scoffed, "and trust a stranger with antique porcelain. Are you out of your mind? They will break it. I need family to handle this. I need you." The entitlement washed over me like toxic sludge. She did not need me. She needed a delivery service that she did not have to pay. She needed someone to validate her impulse purchase. No, I said. The word hung in the air. It was foreign. I had never used it with her before. Not really. I always negotiated. I always compromised. I always folded. "Excuse me," she said. I said no, I repeated. My voice was shaking slightly, but I held the phone tight. "I cannot go. I have a deadline. If I miss this, I could lose my job. You have to make another arrangement, or let the plates go. Let them go," she whispered. "Let them go." After I spent all morning bidding on them, I typed a number into the spreadsheet. I forced myself to keep working while she spiraled. "Mom, I have to go," I said. "I have to finish this report." "You are selfish," she said. The word was not a whisper, it was a weapon. I stopped typing. "I am selfish," I asked. "I am the one booking the flights. I am the one buying the gifts. I am the one planning the menu because you cannot remember what your own sister is allergic to. I am doing everything, Mom." "You do what is expected of a daughter," she spat back. "Do not act like you are a martyr, Harper. You do those things because you are good at organization. It is your only talent, really. God knows you are not good at people." The insult landed in the center of my chest. "My only talent," I said quietly. "You know what I mean," she said. "You are cold, Harper. You are rigid. You care more about your little Excel sheets and your boss than you do about your own mother. I sacrificed everything for you. I gave up my career. I gave up my figure. I gave up my life so you could sit in that fancy apartment and judge me. The narrative, the classic narrative." She had not had a career to give up. She had married my father at 22 and never looked back. But in her mind, she was a tragic heroine who had clipped her own wings to feed her children. "I did not judge you," I said. "I just said I cannot drive to Pasadena." "It is always something with you," she said. Her voice was rising now, becoming shrill. "You are always too busy. You are always too tired. You make everything difficult. Ryan never treats me like this. Ryan would drive to the moon if I asked him. Ryan does not have a job," I said. "Ryan is living on his friend's couch in San Diego because he spent his rent money on a surf trip." "Do not bring your brother into this," she screamed. "He has a free spirit. You could learn something from him. He knows how to love. You just know how to calculate." I felt something snap. It was a quiet sound, like a dry twig stepping on in a winter forest. It was the sound of my desire to please her finally breaking under the weight of her narcissism. "I am calculating," I said. "Okay. You are unbearable lately," she said. "I do not know what happened to you. Maybe it is that city, maybe it is that job, but you are not the daughter I raised. Then who am I asked. "You are a burden," she said. The silence that followed was absolute. She seemed to realize she had gone too far, or maybe she did not. Maybe she felt justified. She took a breath. There was a pause. Then she delivered the final blow, the words that would change everything. "Actually," she said, and her voice was terrifyingly calm, "if you are so busy, if you are so miserable, if helping your mother is such a torture for you, then do not come." I stared at the screen. The cursor on the spreadsheet blinked. Blink, blink, blink. "What did you say?" I asked. I said, "Do not come," she repeated. "No one needs you to come this Christmas, Harper. We will be fine without you. Better, actually. We will be happier without your attitude and your stress. Just stay in LA with your spreadsheets. We do not need you." The words echoed in my head. No one needs you. It should have hurt. It should have made me cry. I should have started begging. I should have promised to drive to Pasadena. I should have apologized for being employed. I should have done what I had done for 32 years. But I did not. Instead, a strange sensation washed over me. It was cold. It was clear. It was the feeling of a fever breaking. If they did not need me, then they did not need my work. If they did not need my presence, then they did not need my money. If they did not need me, then I was free. The panic in my chest vanished. The anxiety about the gluten-free crackers vanished. The stress about Uncle James's aisle seat vanished. I looked at the spreadsheet. I looked at the hundreds of hours of labor represented in those colored cells. I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a demolition expert looking at a condemned building. "Cool," I said. My voice was flat, dead. Eleanor paused. She was expecting a fight. She was expecting tears. She did not know what to do with cool, what she asked. "I said cool," I replied. My voice was steady. I felt my jaw lock, but I kept the tone light, breezy. Then I added the sentence that would wipe the smirk right off her face. "Well, everything will be canceled then." I did not wait for her response. I did not wait for the backpedaling or the screaming or the gaslighting. I pressed the red button on the screen. The call ended. I sat there in the silence of my apartment. The sun was streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I looked at my phone. I went to the settings. I did not block her. That would be too emotional. Instead, I turned on Do Not Disturb. I muted notifications for my mother. I muted notifications for my father. I muted notifications for Caleb. I placed the phone face down on the desk. Then I turned back to my left monitor. I had a Tokyo logistics chain to fix, and for the first time in my life, that was the only thing on my to-do list. The next morning began not with the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but with a vibration so violent it rattled the glass of water on my nightstand. I rolled over and squinted at the screen. It was 7:15 in the morning. I had slept for 8 hours. It was the first time in 6 months I had slept without waking up at 3 in the morning to check my email or add a task to the Christmas master list. For a brief, beautiful moment, I felt light. I felt rested. I felt free. Then I looked at the phone. 42 missed messages, 12 missed calls, all from Caleb. I unlocked the screen and watched the text scroll by like a ticker tape of dysfunction. "Pick up the phone, Harper. Mom is crying in the kitchen." "What did you say to her?" "The caterer just called the house line. You need to fix this right now. Stop being a brat. Answer me." I sat up and rubbed my face. The peace of the morning evaporated, instantly replaced by the familiar tight sensation in my chest. My brother was awake before noon, which meant the situation was catastrophic. Caleb usually did not emerge from his slumber until he had missed at least 2 meal times. I swung my legs out of bed and walked to the kitchen. I needed coffee before I engaged in psychological warfare. I ground the beans. I boiled the water. I poured the dark liquid into my favorite mug. I took a sip. Then the phone rang again. It was Caleb. I took a deep breath. I channeled the cold, dead energy of the previous afternoon. I swiped green. "Hello, Caleb," I said. I did not get to finish the sentence. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted. His voice was loud and distorted, as if he was pacing around a room with bad reception. "Good morning to you too," I said. "Do not give me that corporate attitude, Harper," he snapped. "Mom is a wreck. She has been crying all night. She has a migraine. She says you canceled Christmas. Who does that? Who cancels Christmas on their own mother?" I walked to the window and looked out at the Los Angeles skyline. The smog was sitting low over the city. "I did not cancel Christmas," I said calmly. "Mom uninvited me. She said no one needs me to come. I simply respected her wishes." "She did not mean it like that," he said. "It was the family mantra, the universal solvent designed to wash away all accountability. She did not mean it. That is just how she is. You know she gets stressed. She said it very clearly, Caleb," I said. "She said no one needs me. She said the family would be better off without my attitude. So I removed my attitude and my presence. And my credit card." "That is the problem," he yelled. "The credit card. The catering company called Mom at 7 in the morning. They said the deposit for the appetizers was voided. They said the order is on hold. Mom is freaking out. She has 20 people coming to dinner in 2 weeks and no food." I took another sip of coffee. "That sounds stressful," I said. "Perhaps she should pay the deposit herself." "You know she cannot do that," he said. His voice dropped to a whine. "Dad is having cash flow issues with the business. Mom is liquidating assets. She was counting on you to handle the food. You always handle the food. I handle the food because I pay for the food I said. If I am not attending the dinner, I am not paying for the dinner. That is how commerce works, Caleb." "You are being petty," he said. "You are punishing her because she hurt your feelings. You are 28 years old, Harper. Grow up." "I am 32, I corrected him. And I am not punishing her. I am setting a boundary. A boundary, he scoffed. You sound like one of those therapy accounts on Instagram. Look, just transfer the money. Send the $4,000 to the caterer. Apologize to Mom. Tell her you overreacted. She is willing to forgive you if you fix this today. I laughed. It was a sharp, involuntary sound. She is willing to forgive me, I repeated. That is generous of her, considering she is the one who told me I was unwanted. Caleb sighed. It was a long, exaggerated exhale meant to signal that he was the rational one dealing with a hysterical woman. Harper, look, he said. I know Mom can be difficult. I know she says things, but she is stressed. She wanted those vintage plates to make the table look nice. She wanted it to be perfect. For us. For her, I said. She wanted it perfect for her, so she could post photos and have her friends tell her how elegant she is. Whatever he said. The point is, she relies on us. She relies on you. You make the good money. You have the big fancy job. It is your responsibility to help out. My responsibility, I asked. And what is your responsibility, Caleb? You are 28. You are living on a friend's couch. You have not bought a Christmas present for anyone in 5 years. Last year you gave Dad a half-empty bottle of tequila you found in your trunk. That was vintage tequila, he said defensively. And I am in a transition period. I am finding myself. You have been finding yourself for a decade, I said. Meanwhile, I have been finding the funds to pay for your mistakes. Who paid for your car insurance last year when you got that DUI? Who paid for your lawyer? Mom said you offered to pay for that, he said. I gripped the phone tighter. Mom lied, I said. She told me if I did not pay it, you would go to jail. She told me it was a loan. I have never seen a dime of that $3,000 back. That is because we are family, he shouted. We help each other. We do not keep score. That is your problem, Harper. You treat this family like a business transaction. You think just because you have money, you are better than us. I do not think I am better, I said. I just think I am tired of being used. Used? He laughed. You are not used. You are privileged. You have no idea what it was like for the rest of us. Excuse me, I said. I have no idea. Yeah, he said. You got the easy ride. You went to college, you got the degree, you got out. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything to send you to that school. I froze. The coffee mug halted halfway to my mouth. They sacrificed everything, I asked slowly. What exactly did they sacrifice, Caleb? He stammered for a second, caught off guard by the shift in my tone. Well, the money, he said. The savings. Mom told me about it. She said they had to dip into the family reserves to pay for your tuition. That is why things were so tight for me when I graduated. That is why there was nothing left for my startup idea. Because they spent it all on you. My brain stopped processing the sunlight and the smog. It focused entirely on his words. Dipped into the family reserves. Tight for him. I set the mug down on the counter. My hand was shaking. Caleb, I said. My voice was very quiet. What are you talking about? I paid for college, I took out student loans, I am still paying them off. I send $600 a month to the federal government. I have been sending it for 10 years. There was silence on the other end, a thick, heavy silence. What he said? I said I paid for it, I repeated. Mom and Dad did not pay a cent. They told me there was no money. They told me the market crashed and the savings were wiped out. Caleb let out a nervous laugh. No, that is not right, he said. Mom said she used the college fund for you. She said that is why she could not help me with the crypto investment last year. She said, I gave it all to Harper for her fancy degree. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees felt weak. I leaned against the kitchen island for support. The college fund. I remembered it vividly. I was 12 years old. Nana Beth had come over for Sunday dinner. She had handed me a heavy paper passbook from the bank. It was blue. She had smiled her wrinkly, warm smile and said, Harper, this is for your future. I put money in here every month since you were born. By the time you are 18, it will pay for 4 years of school. I remembered the pride. I remembered the security. And then I remembered the summer before I left for the university. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table with Eleanor and Richard. I remembered my father looking at his shoes. I remembered Eleanor crying, the mark at Harper she had sobbed. "It is all gone. The economy is in ruins. The fund Nana set up is empty. We are so sorry. I had believed them. I was 18. I knew nothing about finance. I knew nothing about markets. I just knew my parents were sad, and I had to be strong. So I signed the loan papers. I took on $60,000 of debt. I worked 2 jobs in the cafeteria and the library while taking full course loads. And now Caleb was saying something different. "Caleb," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Did Mom specifically say she used the fund for my tuition?" "Yeah," he said. He sounded unsure now. He sounded like a child who had accidentally revealed a secret he did not understand. She said, "We cashed out the fund for Harper." That is what she said when I asked for the loan last month. She said, "Go ask your sister, she has the family money." The room spun. "She told you that," I whispered. "Yeah," he said. So that is why you should pay the caterer Harper. It is basically the family's money anyway. You owe it to us." I did not answer. My mind was racing back through time. 8 years ago. The timeline. Caleb was 20. That was the year he totaled the convertible. That was the year he got into trouble with those guys from the poker club. That was the year Dad's hardware store suddenly had a new renovation, despite cash flow issues. And that was the year I was eating instant noodles in a dorm room, counting pennies to buy textbooks, Harper Caleb said. "Are you there? Look, just send the money and I will smooth it over with Mom." I looked at the phone. I looked at the contact name Caleb and the picture of him smirking at a beach. "I owe you nothing," I said. What he asked. "I owe you nothing," I said louder. "And I am not paying the caterer." "Harper, stop being dramatic," he said. "I am not being dramatic," I said. "I am being investigative." I hung up. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. They were trembling from rage. A cold, hard rage that started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. I walked to the closet in the hallway. I pulled down a heavy plastic bin from the top shelf. It was labeled Docs. Old. I had moved 5 times in the last 10 years. Most people threw away old papers. I did not. I was a hoarder of data. I kept every tax return. I kept every bank statement. I kept every receipt. I dragged the bin to the living room floor. I ripped the lid off. If Caleb was right, if Eleanor had lied, if that money existed and she had taken it while watching me sign my life away to a loan shark with a government seal, then this was not just a family dispute. This was a crime. I sat down on the floor amidst the sea of paper. I picked up a folder labeled 2015. I was going to find the truth, and when I found it, I was going to burn their house of cards to the ground. I called my assistant at 1 p.m. I told her I had a family emergency. It was the first time in 6 years that I had used a sick day for something other than hospitalization. I did not care about the optics. I did not care about the Tokyo deadline. I had a new project. I locked the door to my apartment. I pulled the blinds down. The living room was bathed in a dim gray light. It felt appropriate. I was about to perform an autopsy on my own history. The plastic bin labeled Docs Old sat in the center of the rug like a time capsule. I sat down cross-legged in front of it. My heart was hammering against my ribs. It was a slow, heavy rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. I cracked the lid open. The smell of old paper and dust drifted up. It smelled like my dormitory room. It smelled like the library where I had worked for minimum wage shelving books while my friends went to parties. I began to sort. I was methodical. That was my nature. I created piles on the floor, tax returns, student loan applications, medical records, bank statements. I moved backward in time. 2020, 2019, 2018. I found receipts for flights I had booked for my parents. $400 here, $600 there. I found the invoice for the time I paid for Caleb's dental surgery because he did not have insurance, $2,500. I pushed those aside. Those were gifts. Stupid gifts, but gifts nonetheless. I was looking for theft. I dug deeper. I reached the bottom of the bin. The paper was yellowing here. The ink was fading. I found a manila envelope with Nana Beth's handwriting on it. It said Harper Education. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were the quarterly statements from First National Bank of Connecticut. This was the account my grandmother had opened the day I was born. She had contributed $50 every month. She had invested it in low-risk bonds. She had told me it was my safety net. I opened the statement from January of 2015. Balance $58,422. I stared at the number. $58,000. That was enough to pay for my entire tuition. That was enough to pay for housing. That was enough to ensure I graduated without a shackle of debt around my ankle. I opened the next statement. April 2015. The balance had grown slightly with interest. Then I found the statement from October 2015. I unfolded the paper. It was stiff and crinkled. Date October 14th, 2015. Transaction withdrawal. Cashier's check. Amount $58,500. Ending balance 0. I felt the air leave the room. 0. It was not a market crash. The market does not drain an account to exactly 0 with a single transaction. The market fluctuates. It bleeds. It does not vanish in a single afternoon. This was a liquidation. I dug frantically through the envelope. I was looking for the transaction slip. The bank usually mailed photocopies of large withdrawals with the monthly statement. I found it stapled to the back of the November update. It was a small, rectangular piece of paper. The text was grainy, but the details were sharp enough to slice through me. Authorization signature. I leaned in close. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. The signature read, Harper Vance. It was my name. It looked like my signature. It had the same slant. It had the same loop on the P. But it was not mine. I knew my hand. I knew the way I crossed my T. I crossed it with a sharp, quick line. This T was crossed with a flourish, a decorative, hesitant flourish. And the H. The H was the giveaway. I wrote my H with 2 parallel lines. Eleanor wrote her H with a slight curve at the bottom, a stylistic choice she had learned in calligraphy class in the 80s. The H on the withdrawal slip had the curve. It was a forgery. It was a good forgery. It was a practiced forgery. Someone had sat down with my old permission slips or my birthday cards and studied my hand. Someone had practiced on a scrap of paper until they got it right. And then that someone had walked into a bank and stolen my future. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor. I felt a wave of nausea. I crawled to the trash can in the kitchen and dry heaved. Nothing came up but bile. I wiped my mouth and went back to the living room. I needed to understand the why. Why October 14th? Why 2015? I closed my eyes. I tried to transport myself back to that autumn. I was 21. I was a junior in college. I was working double shifts at the coffee shop because my tuition payment was due, and Eleanor had told me the fund was gone. "We are so sorry, Harper. The economy is terrible." That was the lie. But what was the truth? I looked at the date again. October 14th. October. The leaves were turning. It was raining. I remembered a phone call, not from my mother, but from my father. He had sounded terrified. He had whispered into the phone, "Harper, pray for your brother." Caleb. Caleb had been 20 years old. He had dropped out of community college. He was living at home. He was driving the red sports car my father had bought during a midlife crisis. I remembered the story they told me later. Caleb had a small fender bender. He hit a pole. The car was damaged, but he was fine. But that did not make sense. A fender bender does not cost $58,000. I grabbed my laptop. I opened a browser. I typed in the name of our hometown newspaper. I went to the archives. I searched for Caleb Vance. Nothing. I searched for car accident, October 2015. There were 3 results. One was a deer strike, one was a truck on the highway, and one was a short police blotter entry from October 13th. Vehicle collision on Route 9. 2 vehicles involved. Property damage reported. No injuries. Settlement pending. I stared at the screen. Settlement pending. I remembered something else. I remembered Caleb complaining about his friends from the city. He had been hanging out with a group of older men who played high-stakes poker in the back of a cigar lounge. Caleb had a gambling problem. We all knew it. He bet on football. He bet on horses. He bet on which raindrop would hit the bottom of the window first. But we thought it was small. We thought it was harmless. I typed Caleb Vance Poker into the search bar. Nothing. I went to Facebook. I scrolled back 9 years on Caleb's timeline. It took 20 minutes. October 12th, 2015. He had posted a status. Big night tonight. Going all in. Wish me luck. October 13th. Silence. October 14th. Silence. October 15th. A picture of him and Mom at a fancy steakhouse. The caption read, "Family is everything. Blessed to have a clean slate." A clean slate. The pieces clicked together like the tumblers of a safe. Caleb had gambled. He had lost. He had lost big. Maybe he owed money to the wrong people. Maybe he was driving that red car while running away from a debt collector, or maybe he was driving it while intoxicated and hit someone who agreed to keep quiet for a price, $58,000. That was the price of his clean slate. My mother had not just stolen my money, she had made a choice. She had looked at her 2 children. One was working 2 jobs and studying until her eyes bled to build a future. The other was a reckless gambler who had driven his life into a ditch. She saw a pot of money. It belonged to the worker. It belonged to the saver. And she took it. She took every single cent to bail out the gambler. She sacrificed the daughter to save the son. And then she looked the daughter in the face and told her it was the economy. I looked at the withdrawal slip again. The forged signature seemed to mock me. Harper Vance. She had used my name to ruin me. The anger I had felt the day before vanished. Anger is hot. Anger is fiery. Anger burns out. This was not anger. This was disgust. It was a cold, oily sensation that coated my insides. It was the feeling of realizing that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the predators. She had let me take out loans. She had watched me stress over rent. She had watched me skip meals. She had watched me decline spring break trips because I could not afford a plane ticket. She had watched me struggle for 10 years. And all that time, she knew. She knew she had $58,000 of my money sitting in someone else's pocket. She had bought Caleb's freedom with my slavery. I stood up. My legs were stiff. I walked to the window. The sun was setting over Los Angeles. The city was turning into a grid of golden lights. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I did not look like the good daughter anymore. I did not look like the fixer. I looked like a prosecutor. This was no longer about Christmas. This was no longer about vintage plates or canceled catering or hurtful words. This was financial warfare. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number. Not my mother, not Caleb. I dialed the number of a forensic accountant I had used for a corporate audit 2 years ago. He answered on the first ring. "Robert," I said. "It is Harper. I have a job for you." "Harper," he said. "Good to hear from you. Is this for the Tokyo project?" "No," I said. "This is personal. I need you to trace a transaction from 2015. I have a paper trail, but I need the official bank routing numbers. I need to know exactly where the money went after it left the account. I need proof that will stand up in a court of law." There was a pause. "Court of law?" he asked. "Harper, who are we targeting?" "My mother," I said. The silence on the line was heavy. "I see," he said. "Send me the documents." I hung up. I looked down at the pile of papers on the floor. I looked at the forgery. I carefully placed the withdrawal slip into a plastic sheet protector. I placed the bank statements in a crisp new folder. I was not going to scream. I was not going to cry. I was going to compile evidence. I walked to the kitchen and poured the cold coffee down the sink. I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of white wine. I poured a glass. I sat down at my computer. I opened a new file. I named it The Case. I typed the first entry. Exhibit a theft of educational trust. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like victory. They thought I was just a girl who planned parties. They thought I was just a secretary with a checkbook. They forgot that I was a project manager. I managed risk. I managed budgets. I managed disasters. And I was about to manage the most hostile takeover this family had ever seen. The morning sun was brutally bright against the white walls of my living room. It was Wednesday, 3 days until Christmas. I sat at my desk with the posture of a concert pianist about to play a very violent concerto. On the screen in front of me, the spreadsheet was open. but it was no longer a planning document. It was a hit list. I had spent the night staring at the forged withdrawal slip from 2015. The image of my mother's looping signature over my own name was burned into my retinas. That single piece of paper had severed the final thread of guilt holding me to my family. For years I had operated under the delusion that I owed them. I owed them for my childhood. I owed them for their sacrifices. I owed them for the roof over my head. But the ledger had been balanced. In fact, it had been overpaid. They had taken $58,000 of my future. They had taken my credit score. They had taken my peace of mind. Now I was going to take back what was mine. I looked at column F, estimated cost. The total for the Christmas Eve dinner was staggering. My mother did not believe in potlucks. She believed in catered service. She believed in gold-rimmed chargers and crystal stemware. She believed in an image of wealth that she did not possess. And for the last 5 years, I had been the financier of that image. I cracked my knuckles. Step 1. The food. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for Gourmet Affairs. It was the premier catering company in our hometown. The owner was a woman named Patricia Higgins. She was a fixture in the local country club set and a longtime frenemy of my mother. They played bridge together on Tuesdays and judged each other's children on Wednesdays. The phone rang 4 times before a breathless receptionist answered. "Gourmet Affairs Holiday Kitchen," she chirped. "How may I help you?" "Hello," I said. My voice was clipped. Professional. "This is Harper Vance. I am calling regarding the order for the Vance residence on December 24th. "Oh, Harper," the receptionist said. Her tone shifted instantly to one of pity. "We heard. Your mother called this morning. She was in such a state." I stiffened. Of course she had called. Eleanor always launched a preemptive strike. "I am sure she was," I said. "I am calling to cancel the order." There was a pause on the line, then a click, then the sound of hold music. It was a jazz version of Jingle Bells. It played for 2 full minutes. Then Patricia Higgins came on the line. "Harper, dear," she said. Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness like high fructose corn syrup. "I was just speaking with Eleanor. She told me you might be having a bit of an episode." An episode, I repeated. "Yes, dear," she said. "She said work stress has finally gotten to you. She said you are confused about the plans. But do not worry. We are going ahead with the dinner. We know you are not yourself right now." I felt a vein throb in my temple. My mother had not just uninvited me, she had painted me as mentally unstable to her entire social circle to protect her party. "Patricia," I said, "I am perfectly lucid, and I am canceling the order. Now, Harper." Patricia said, and her voice dropped an octave, "Let us be reasonable. It is 3 days before Christmas. The filet mignon has been ordered. The truffles are prepped. I cannot just cancel a $4,000 order because you are having a tantrum. Your mother is counting on this. My mother is not paying for this," I said. "I am." "Well, that is a family matter," she said dismissively. "Eleanor said you would say this. She said to ignore any calls from you. She said the party must go on." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I visualized the contract I had signed 2 months ago. I visualized the terms and conditions. I visualized the power I held as the project manager of this entire charade. "Patricia," I said, "I am going to ask you to listen very carefully. Are you looking at the order file in front of you? I am looking at the kitchen schedule." "Harper," she snapped, "I am very busy. Open the billing file," I said. "Tell me whose name is on the credit card." There was a heavy sigh. Then the sound of typing. "It is your card, Harper," she said. "We know that. You pay every year." "Correct," I said. "And tell me whose signature is on the service agreement contract." "Yours," she said. "But Harper." "And tell me," I interrupted, "what does Clause 14, Section B say regarding cancellation policies for non-corporate events?" Silence. "I will tell you what it says," I continued. "It says that the client may cancel services up to 48 hours prior to the event date for a full refund of the deposit minus a 10% administrative fee." It is Wednesday, Patricia. The event is Saturday. I am outside the 48-hour window. I am legally entitled to cancel. Patricia let out a laugh. It was a nervous sound. "Harper, you cannot be serious," she said. "You are going to ruin your mother's Christmas over a technicality. I have already bought the beef. That is an inventory issue, Patricia." "Not a contract issue," I said. "I am not canceling," she said. Her voice was hard now. The niceties were gone. "I have a business to run. I am running the card for the remaining balance tomorrow morning as scheduled. Eleanor wants this dinner. I am providing this dinner. You can work it out with her later." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that no one could see. "Okay, Patricia," I said. "If you run that card, I will initiate an immediate chargeback for unauthorized use. I will submit the cancellation email I am about to send you as evidence of fraud." American Express usually sides with the cardholder, especially when the vendor knowingly processes a transaction after a verbal and written revocation of authority. I paused to let that sink in, and I continued. "I will also write a review. I will write a review on Yelp. I will write a review on Google. I will write a review on the Better Business Bureau website. I will detail exactly how Gourmet Affairs refuses to honor their own written contracts and attempts to bully clients into paying for services they do not want. I have a verified account with elite status on Yelp, Patricia. My reviews get read." There was silence on the other end. Patricia Higgins cared about two things: her profit margins and her reputation. I had just threatened both. "You would not dare," she whispered. "Try me," I said. "Check your inbox. I just sent the formal cancellation notice. If I do not see a voided transaction receipt in my email within the next 10 minutes, I am calling the fraud department." I waited. The silence stretched. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in her office. I could hear her breathing. "Fine," she spat. "Fine. I will cancel it," she said. "But do not ever call my business again, Harper. And I am telling your mother exactly what you did." "You are a cruel little girl. I am a 32-year-old woman with a contract, Patricia," I said. "Have a Merry Christmas." I hung up. I stared at the phone. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. One down. I turned back to the spreadsheet. I highlighted row 12, Gourmet Affairs. I changed the fill color from green to red. Status canceled. Recovery, $4,200. I did not stop to celebrate. I had momentum now. I was a shark in the water, and there was blood in the water. Next up, the bakery. I called Sweet Confections. They were making the custom bûcher de Noël. It was a Yule log cake made of Belgian chocolate and filled with hazelnut cream. It cost $350. This call was shorter. The baker did not know my mother personally. He was just a businessman. "Hi," I said. "This is Harper Vance. I need to cancel the order for Saturday." "But it is a custom cake," he said. "We have already made the marzipan mushrooms." "I understand," I said. "But the party is canceled. I am happy to pay for the mushrooms, but I do not need the cake. Please refund the balance." He grumbled. He argued about the labor costs. I quoted the consumer protection laws regarding goods not received. I offered to let him keep $50 for the trouble. He agreed. Status canceled. Recovery. $300. Next, the linens. My mother had insisted on renting specialized tablecloths. They were a specific shade of white called Arctic Frost. Apparently regular white was too plebeian for her vision. The rental company was confused. "But the delivery truck is loaded," they said. "Unloaded," I said. "But Mrs. Vance called yesterday to add extra napkins," they said. "Mrs. Vance does not have the credit card on file," I said. "I do. Cancel it." Status canceled. Recovery, $600. Next, the musicians. Eleanor had hired a string trio from the local conservatory. She wanted them to play Vivaldi while people ate appetizers. It was pretentious. It was unnecessary. It was $1,200 for 3 hours. I called the cellist. "I am so sorry," I said, using my best fake sympathetic voice. "My mother has fallen ill. It is a terrible flu. We have to call off the gathering. We would not want to expose you to the virus." "Oh my," the cellist said. "That is awful. We hope she feels better." "Thank you," I said. "I will process the cancellation fee as per our agreement, but please refund the rest." They were relieved. They did not want to play Vivaldi in a living room for a bunch of drunk suburbanites on Christmas Eve anyway. They wanted to be home with their families. Status canceled. Recovery, $1,000. I worked down the list. The florist for the centerpieces. Canceled. The cleaning crew scheduled for the day after. Canceled. The high-end wine delivery. Canceled. It took me 2 hours. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I sat back in my chair. My inbox was pinging with receipt notifications. Your transaction has been voided, refund processed, order cancellation confirmed. I opened the calculator app on my phone. I punched in the numbers, 4,200, plus 300, plus 600, plus 1,000, plus 800 for the wine, plus 600 for the cleaning, plus 500 for the flowers. The total flashed on the screen, $8,000. $8,000. That was the price of my mother's perfect Christmas. That was $8,000 of my hard-earned money. Money I had made by working 60-hour weeks. Money I had made by missing birthdays and dates and sleep. For years I had handed it over without question. I had told myself it was my duty. I had told myself it was rent for the space I took up in their lives. But looking at that number now, I felt a surge of nausea. They had stolen $58,000 from me 8 years ago, and every year since then, they had tricked me into spending another $8,000 or $10,000 on their lifestyle. They were not just bad parents, they were parasites. I looked at the notifications again. The money would be back in my account within 3 to 5 business days. It was not $58,000. It would never be $58,000, but it was a start. I took a screenshot of the voided catering receipt. I opened the folder on my desktop labeled The Case. I dragged the screenshot in. Then I opened my banking app. I set up a transfer. As soon as that refund hits, I whispered to the empty room, I am moving it. I was moving it to a high-yield savings account at a completely different bank. A bank my mother had never heard of. A bank where no one knew my maiden name. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Aunt Linda. Harper. Are you okay? Patricia Higgins just called me. She said you threatened to sue her. She said you canceled the food. Is this true? Your mother is going to have a heart attack. I looked at the message. I did not feel guilty. I did not feel afraid. I felt powerful. I typed a reply. Hi, Aunt Linda. Yes, it is true. Mom told me not to come, so I am not coming, and neither is my wallet. If she wants the food, she is welcome to call Patricia back and give her own credit card number. I am sure Patricia will be happy to take it. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. It was mostly empty because I had planned to be in Connecticut for the holidays. I had a frozen pizza and a bottle of wine. It was not filet mignon. It was not vintage champagne. But as I put the pizza in the oven, I realized something. It was going to be the most delicious meal I had ever eaten, because for the first time in my life, I was not paying for my own abuse. I sat on my beige sofa with my phone resting on my knee. The apartment was silent, but the digital world was beginning to scream. In the world of psychology, there is a term for what was happening. It is called the flying monkey effect. The term comes from The Wizard of Oz. The Wicked Witch does not always fly out to capture Dorothy herself. She sends her monkeys. They are the enablers. They are the henchmen. They are the people who have been manipulated by the narcissist into believing that the victim is actually the villain. My mother was the witch, and her monkeys were waking up. She would not call me herself. Eleanor Vance was too proud for that. She had told me I was not needed. If she called me now to beg for the catering to be reinstated, she would have to admit that she needed me. She would have to admit that her threats were empty and her power was an illusion. So she did what she always did. She triangulated. She spun a story of victimhood and deployed the infantry. The first missile arrived at 5:14 in the afternoon. It was a text message from Aunt Linda. Linda was my mother's younger sister. She was a woman who defined herself by her proximity to drama. She fed on it. She was the family historian of grudges and the keeper of secrets that were not hers to keep. I watched the text bubble appear. Harper, I am shaking. I am literally shaking. Patricia Higgins just called me. She said you canceled the Christmas dinner. She said you threatened to sue her. How could you do this to your mother? She is in the bedroom crying her eyes out. She says she cannot breathe. I stared at the words. She cannot breathe. It was a classic Eleanor line. She never just felt sad. She had medical emergencies. She had palpitations. She had vapors. I did not feel a pang of guilt. I felt a surge of clinical detachment. I was a scientist observing a predictable chemical reaction. I unlocked my phone. I did not type a defense. I did not type an apology. I did not type a long paragraph explaining that Eleanor had uninvited me. Explanations are for people who listen. Flying monkeys do not listen. They only attack. Instead, I opened my banking app. I scrolled back through the archives. I went to the year 2021. I found it. Date, August 12, 2021. Transaction wire transfer. Recipient Linda Miller. Amount $2,000. Memo roof repair loan. I took a screenshot. Then I went to my old text messages with my mother. I searched for the word Linda. I found a message from December of that same year. Mom. Good news. Linda gave me the cash for your loan today. She wanted me to pass it along. I will deposit it for you next week. I checked my deposit history for December 2021. There was no deposit. There was no cash. There was only silence. I pieced the narrative together in my mind. Linda had paid the money back. She had given it to Eleanor to give to me. Eleanor had kept it. And Eleanor had likely told Linda that I had received it and was grateful. Or perhaps she told Linda that I said to keep it as a gift. Whatever the lie was, it was about to unravel. I went back to Linda's hysterical text. How could you do this to your mother? I typed my reply. I kept my fingers steady. Hello, Aunt Linda. I am sorry you are upset. However, since we are discussing family obligations and money, I have a question. Do you remember the $2,000 loan I gave you for your roof repair 3 years ago? The one I wired to your account. I hit send. The 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing. Then she stopped. Then she typed again. What does that have to do with anything? You are deflecting. This is about you ruining Christmas. I continued typing. Mom told me that you paid her the cash back in December of 2021. She said she would give it to me. I checked my records today. I never received a single penny of that money. Mom told me she was holding it for me. I assumed she gave it back to you, or maybe she forgot. I attached the screenshot of the wire transfer. Then I attached the screenshot of Eleanor's text confirming she had collected the cash. You might want to ask Mom where that $2,000 went, Linda, because if you paid her and I did not get it, then one of us has been robbed, and it was not by me. I hit send. I watched the screen. Read 5:22 p.m. There was no reply. The silence was delicious. I could imagine the scene in Connecticut. Linda standing in her kitchen staring at her phone. The sudden realization that the sister she was defending had likely pocketed her hard-earned cash. The doubt seeping in. I was not just defending myself, I was planting seeds. Seeds of suspicion. Seeds of truth. 10 minutes later, the second wave hit. It was Uncle Robert. My father's brother. He was the peacemaker. He was the one who always said family comes first, while ignoring the fact that half the family was miserable. His text was longer. It was a lecture. Harper. I am disappointed. I know you and your mother have your differences, but she is aging. She is fragile. To pull the rug out from under her financially like this is cruel. It is abuse, Harper. We all pitch in for the holidays. It is what we do. You are lucky to have the means to host. You should be gracious. Fix this. You are lucky to have the means. The phrase made me laugh out loud. It was a bitter, sharp sound in the empty room. Lucky. I was lucky to work 60 hours a week. I was lucky to have student loans. I was lucky to have a savings account that I built from scratch while my family drained my trust fund. I did not argue with Robert about the definition of abuse. I did not argue about his perception of my wealth. I went to the folder on my laptop, the case. I opened the file containing the foreclosure notice on Grandma's house from 5 years ago, the notice that I had paid off to save her home. I remembered that day. Mom and Dad had told everyone that they had handled the situation. They had told the family that Richard's business had a good quarter, and they saved Nana Beth. They took the applause. They took the credit. I typed a reply to Robert. Hi, Uncle Robert. I understand your perspective. You think I am being stingy. Since we are talking about who pitches in, I thought you should see this. I attached the receipt from the bank. It was a cashier's check for $12,000 made out to the county tax collector. The remitter was Harper Vance. 5 years ago, when Nana was about to lose her house due to unpaid taxes, Mom told everyone that Dad paid it. She told the family that the business saved the day. As you can see from this check, I paid it. I drained my emergency fund to keep Nana indoors. I never asked for credit. I never asked for repayment. But do not lecture me about pitching in. I have purchased my right to say no. I hit send. Read 5:40 p.m. Robert started typing. Then he stopped. Then the typing bubble disappeared. Another silence. I could feel the shift. It was subtle, but it was real. The energy in the family network was changing. They were starting to realize that I was not just throwing a tantrum. I was holding the ledger. And the ledger was full of red ink that pointed directly at Eleanor and Richard. But I was not done. There was one more person I needed to address. Cousin Sarah. Sarah was the golden child of the cousin group. She was the one with the gluten allergy and the perfect Instagram life. She was Eleanor's favorite niece because she was malleable and complimentary. Sarah did not text. She posted. I got a notification that I had been tagged in a Facebook status. I opened the app. Sarah had posted a picture of a broken gingerbread house. So sad that some people choose to destroy family traditions just because they are bitter. Christmas is about love, not money. Praying for my Aunt Eleanor, who is heartbroken tonight because of ungrateful children. #family first. #heartbroken. #Grinch. There were 3 likes. One was from my mother. I stared at the hashtag family first. I went to the comments section. I did not care about public perception anymore. I cared about the truth. I typed a comment. Hi Sarah, nice photo. Speaking of money and family, I noticed you are still using the KitchenAid mixer I bought you for your wedding, the one Mom told everyone she bought. I still have the receipt from Williams-Sonoma if you need it for the warranty. Also, since Mom uninvited me from Christmas, I assume you will be hosting. Enjoy the gluten-free crackers. I paid for those too, but I canceled the delivery. You might want to run to the store. I hit post. 2 minutes later, the post was deleted. Gone. Erased from the internet. I put my phone down on the coffee table. My heart was racing, but my mind was clear. I had silenced the monkeys. They were not attacking anymore. They were scrambling. They were calling each other. They were whispering. Did Harper really pay for the roof? Did Harper really save Grandma's house? Did Eleanor lie? The doubt was spreading like a virus, and Eleanor was patient zero. But I knew this was not enough. Stopping the attack was defense. I needed to go on the offensive. I needed to change the venue of the war. I looked at the time. It was 6 o'clock. My mother wanted to control the narrative. She wanted to be the victim in a lonely house with no food, telling everyone that her cruel daughter had abandoned her. I was not going to let her be the martyr. I was going to build a lifeboat, and I was going to invite everyone to get on it. I picked up my phone again. I opened WhatsApp. I created a new group. I scrolled through the contacts. I added Aunt Linda. I added Uncle Robert. I added Cousin Sarah. I added Uncle James. I added Nana Beth. I added the neighbors who usually came to the party. I did not add Eleanor. I did not add Richard. I did not add Caleb. I named the group Christmas Update 2.0. I stared at the blinking cursor. This was the moment. This was the coup. I typed the message. Hey everyone, just a quick update regarding the holiday plans. As you may have heard, Mom is feeling very overwhelmed this year. She told me explicitly that she needs space and that no one needs me to come home. She wants to scale things down to avoid stress. I paused. It was the truth. It was a weaponized truth. I am respecting her wishes, so I will not be attending the dinner at the house. I have canceled the catering to relieve her of the burden of hosting a large event. However, I know many of you have already made travel plans. So I am hosting an alternative gathering at my place here in Los Angeles. It will not be fancy. There will be no black tie code. There will be pizza and wine and whatever potluck dishes you want to bring. If you want a warm meal, real talk, and a stress-free evening, my door is open. This is not about choosing sides. This is about ensuring no one spends Christmas alone because of a scheduling change. Let me know if you want to drop by. No pressure. I took a breath. I hit send. The message went out to 20 people. I set the phone down. I walked to the window. The city lights were blurring in the distance. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then the phone buzzed. It was Nana Beth. "I am coming. Pick me up." Then a cousin from the other side of the family. "Honestly, a smaller thing sounds nice. We were only coming because of you anyway, Harper." Then a neighbor. "Can I bring dessert?" Then Uncle James. "Will there be beer?" Eleanor never buys the good beer. I watch the notifications stack up. "I am in. We are coming. Send the address." I smiled. It was not a smirk. It was a genuine smile. My mother had built an empire on fear and obligation. She thought people came to her parties because she was the queen. She was wrong. They came because I did the work. They came because I made it effortless. And now that I had moved the effort to a new location, the audience was following the producer. The flying monkeys were landing, and they were landing on my roof. The smear campaign began at dawn on Thursday. My mother did not tag me. That would have been too direct. That would have allowed me to defend myself in the comments section. Instead, she utilized the weapon of choice for passive-aggressive matriarchs everywhere. The vague book post. I woke up to a notification from a cousin in Ohio. It was just a screenshot. He had sent me an image of Eleanor's Facebook timeline. There was a photo of a weeping willow tree. Overlaid on the branches in terrible cursive font was a quote. "The sharpest pain in life is the sting of an ungrateful child. A mother gives her body to create life, but a selfish daughter takes the soul." Below the image, Eleanor had written her own caption, "Feeling so betrayed today. It is heartbreaking when you sacrifice your financial security and your youth for your children, only to be cast aside when you are no longer useful to them. Some people value money over family. I am just praying for their lost souls. Hashtag heartbroken, hashtag sacrifice, hashtag betrayal." I scrolled through the comments. Patricia Higgins had commented, "So true, Eleanor. You are a saint." "Some people do not deserve your generosity," Aunt Linda had commented. "Stay strong, sister. We know the truth." My mother liked every single comment. She was building a fortress of sympathy. She was painting a portrait of herself as the victim of a greedy, cruel daughter who had abandoned her on Christmas Eve. I sat at my kitchen island with a cup of black coffee. For 32 years I had played by her rules. The rule was silence. The rule was that we kept our dirty laundry inside the house. The rule was that Eleanor was allowed to rewrite history, and we were required to nod and smile. But the rules had changed when she forged my signature. I looked at the folder on my counter. The case. I opened it. I took out the photocopy of the withdrawal slip from 2015. I took out the bank statement showing the zero balance. I looked at my phone. I had two choices. I could let her win the court of public opinion. I could let her tell the world I was a monster. Or I could burn the script. I stood up. I did not put on makeup. I did not fix my hair, which was pulled back in a severe bun. I was wearing a simple black t-shirt. I walked to the window where the morning light was harsh and unforgiving. I propped my phone up against a fruit bowl. I opened the TikTok app. I hit record. I stared straight into the lens. I did not smile. My mother told me no one needs me to come home for Christmas this year. I started the story there. I kept my voice low and steady. I did not shout. I did not cry. So I decided to see what would happen if I stopped doing all the invisible work I've been doing for her my entire life. I listed the tasks, the spreadsheets, the travel bookings, the menu planning, the emotional regulation. I described the way she took credit for every decoration and every meal while I scrubbed pans in the dark. Then I paused. I leaned closer to the camera. But that is not the reason I am not going home. Malicious compliance is fun, but theft is a crime. I held up the piece of paper. I had used a marker to redact the account number and the bank routing code, but the date was visible, the amount was visible, and the signatures were visible. This is a withdrawal slip from a college trust fund my grandmother set up for me. My finger traced the line on the paper, $58,500. It was withdrawn on October 14, 2015, the same week my brother totaled a sports car and owed a lot of money to some very bad people. I looked back at the lens. My mother told me the market crashed. She told me the money was gone. She watched me sign $60,000 in student loans. She watched me work 2 jobs. She watched me struggle, all while she used my future to pay for her golden child's mistakes. I dropped the paper onto the counter. The sound was sharp. So when she went on Facebook this morning to call me selfish, when she told her friends that I value money over family, she was projecting. I picked up the phone. I ended the video with a tight, cold smile. Tell me, if you discovered your mother sold your future to protect her favorite child, would you still play nice at Christmas? Or would you start rewriting the guest list too? I watched the replay once. It was raw, it was ugly, it was perfect. I added a caption, Part 1, The Receipts. I hit post. I watched the progress bar load, uploading, sent, then I closed the app. I was not done. The internet was for the strangers. The internet was for the court of public opinion. But I needed to address the jury. I opened the WhatsApp application. I went to the original family group chat, the one titled Vance Family Christmas. It included everyone: Eleanor, Richard, Caleb, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. It had been silent since I created the splinter group yesterday, but I knew everyone was watching it. I tapped the plus sign. I selected Photo Library. I selected the high-resolution image of the forged check. I did not redact anything this time. I hit send. The image appeared in the chat history, a stark white rectangle against the festive green background of the chat wallpaper. Then I typed a message. Hi everyone. I saw Mom's Facebook post about betrayal. I thought I should clarify something. The reason I am not coming home is not because I am ungrateful. It is because I found this. I sent a second message. This is the withdrawal slip for the college fund Nana Beth set up for me. As you can see, it was drained 8 years ago. The signature at the bottom reads Harper Vance, but I did not sign it. I was in a chemistry lab at the university that day. I sent a third message. Mom forged my signature. She took $58,000 of my money. She used it to pay off Caleb's gambling debts and legal fees from his accident. She let me take out loans while she spent my safety net. I paused. My fingers hovered over the keys. So if anyone is wondering why the catering is canceled or why I am hosting my own dinner, it is because I can no longer break bread with people who rob me. If you have questions about where the money went, ask Eleanor and Caleb. I am sure they have a creative answer. I hit send. I set the phone down on the table. My heart was pounding in my throat. It was done. The nuclear button had been pressed. I watched the screen. Read by Mom. Read by Caleb. Read by Dad. Read by Aunt Linda. The blue check marks appeared one by one. The chat remained silent. No one typed. No one sent a shocked emoji. It was the silence of a room where a grenade has just been thrown and everyone is waiting for the explosion. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes passed. Then my phone began to ring. It was not Eleanor. It was not Caleb. The screen said, Nana Beth. I stared at it. Nana Beth never called me during the day. She had arthritis in her hands and preferred to use the landline on Sundays. I picked up the phone. Hello, Nana, I said softly. There was a sound on the other end. It was a sound I had never heard before. It was the sound of a strong woman weeping. Harper, she whispered. Her voice was thin and trembling. I am here, Nana, I said. Tell me it is not true, she said. Please, Harper, tell me it is a mistake. Tell me the bank made an error. I closed my eyes. Tears pricked at the corners. This was the only collateral damage I regretted. It is true, Nana, I said. I found the papers yesterday. I have the forensic audit. The money is gone. But I saved that money, she sobbed. I put it away $50 at a time. I skipped vacations. I drove that old car for 20 years so I could put money in that account. I wanted you to be free, Harper. I wanted you to have a start. I know, Nana, I said. I know. She told me it was the market, she cried. She looked me in the eye at Christmas dinner that year and told me the crash took it. She lied to me. My own daughter lied to me. She did not just lie, Nana, I said. She stole. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the clock ticking in her hallway 3,000 miles away. Then the weeping stopped. When Nana spoke again, her voice was different. It was not the voice of a grandmother. It was the voice of a matriarch who had survived wars and recessions. "Are you still hosting dinner?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Come and get me," she said. "Nana, you are in Connecticut," I said. "I am in Los Angeles." "I do not care," she said. "Send me a ticket, or I will walk. I am not spending one more minute in this house with a thief. I want to see you, Harper. I want to see the granddaughter I invested in." I smiled through my tears. "I will book the flight right now," I said. "I will pick you up at the airport tomorrow." "Good," she said. "And Harper." "Yes, Nana." "Post it all," she said. "Let them all see. If she wanted to be famous, let her be famous for this." The line clicked dead. I looked at my phone. The viral video had 10,000 views in 20 minutes. The comments were pouring in. But the only opinion that mattered was the one I had just heard. Eleanor had tried to turn the family against me. Instead, she had handed me the crown. I opened the airline app. I booked a first-class ticket for Nana Beth. It cost $2,000. I paid for it with the money I had recovered from the catering cancellation. It was poetic justice. Eleanor's filet mignon was going to fly her mother across the country to the daughter she had tried to erase. The digital celebration of my victory was short-lived. 10 minutes after I booked the flight for Nana Beth, I tried to call her back to give her the confirmation number. The phone rang 4 times, then it went to voicemail. I waited 5 minutes. I tried again. This time it did not ring at all. It went straight to the automated message. "The subscriber you have called is not available." My stomach tightened. I knew that sound. It was the sound of a device that had been manually powered down. It was the sound of a connection being severed. I looked at the time. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. Nana Beth never turned off her phone. She kept it charged on her bedside table in case of emergencies. She was 74 years old and lived in constant fear of falling. There was only one explanation. Eleanor had intercepted the asset. My mother had seen the group chat. She had seen the photo of the forged check. She had likely heard Nana Beth crying in the guest room. And because Eleanor could not control the narrative, she had decided to control the players. She had confiscated the phone. I stood up and grabbed my car keys. I had told myself I would not go back to that house. I had told myself I was done with the drama. But this was different. This was not a dinner invitation. This was a hostage situation. I canceled the flight I had just booked. I did not need an airplane. I needed a getaway car. I walked out of my apartment and took the elevator down to the garage. I got into my SUV. I typed the address into the navigation system, even though I could drive there blindfolded. The drive to Pasadena usually took 40 minutes. I made it in 25. I drove with the precision of a tactical unit. I did not listen to music. I did not listen to a podcast. I listened to the blood rushing in my ears. My mother thought she could silence the witnesses. She thought she could bully an old woman into submission just like she had bullied me for 3 decades. She thought that if she removed the means of communication, she removed the threat. She forgot that I was no longer playing by her rules. I arrived at the neighborhood just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. The street was lined with palm trees wrapped in twinkling white lights. It looked idyllic. It looked like the opening scene of a holiday movie where everyone learns a lesson about love. I pulled up to the curb 3 houses down from my parents' home. I killed the engine. I did not march up to the front door. That would cause a scene. That would give Eleanor the audience she craved. She would stand in the doorway and scream. She would call the neighbors. She would play the victim. I was not here to give a performance. I was here to perform an extraction. I pulled out my phone. I did not call Eleanor. I called the weak link. I called my father. Richard Vance answered on the second ring. His voice was a hushed whisper. "Harper," he hissed. "What are you doing? Your mother is in a state. You have to stop posting things. The neighbors are talking." "Hello, Dad," I said. My voice was ice. "I am parked 3 houses down." There was a silence. I could hear him breathing. I could hear the faint sound of the television in the background. "You are here?" he asked. "I am here," I said. "And I am here for Nana." "You cannot come in, Harper," he said. "Your mother says you are banned. She says you are dangerous. She says you are trying to destroy this family." "I am not trying to destroy anything, Dad," I said. "The truth is doing that all on its own. Now listen to me very carefully. You have 5 minutes to bring Nana out to my car. "I cannot do that," he said. "She is resting. Your mother gave her a sedative. She was very upset after your little stunt in the group chat. She is not resting, Dad," I said. "She is being held against her will, and you confiscated her phone." "We took the phone for her own good," he said. She was confused. "You were upsetting her with your lies." "My lies," I repeated. "The check is a lie. The forensic audit is a lie." He did not answer. He knew. Of course he knew. He had signed the tax returns for the last 10 years. He knew exactly where the money had gone. He was not a villain. He was a coward. And cowards are often more dangerous than villains because they let the bad things happen while looking the other way. "Dad," I said, "I am going to give you a choice, and I need you to make it right now." I looked at the digital clock on my dashboard. "Option A," I said. "You walk into that guest room, you pack Nana's bag, you help her put on her coat, and you walk her out the side door to my car. We drive away. No screaming, no fighting." "Harper, please," he whispered. "Option B," I continued. "I hang up this phone. I dial 911. I request a welfare check on a senior citizen. I tell the police that my 74-year-old grandmother is being held without access to communication by a woman who just stole $58,000 from a family trust." I paused to let the legal weight of those words settle on his shoulders. "I will use the words elderly abuse, Dad. I will use the words false imprisonment. And when the squad car rolls up with the lights flashing and the neighbors come out to watch, I will hand the officers the evidence of the grand larceny." "You would not do that," he said. His voice trembled. "You would not arrest your own mother." "Try me," I said. I had said those words to Patricia Higgins yesterday. I had meant them then. I meant them even more now. I watched the second hand on the clock tick. "You have 4 minutes, Dad," I said. "Harper, be reasonable," he pleaded. "It is Christmas." "That is why I am here," I said, "to spend Christmas with the only person in that house who did not steal from me." 3 minutes. I hung up. I sat in the dark car. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I watched the house. It was a beautiful house. It was a 2-story colonial with perfect landscaping. It was the house where I had grown up. It was the house where I had learned to be quiet. It was the house where I had learned that love was conditional. The front windows were glowing with warm yellow light. I could see the silhouette of the Christmas tree in the living room. It looked perfect. 1 minute passed. Nothing moved. 2 minutes passed. I unlocked my phone. I opened the keypad. I typed 911. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was not bluffing. I was prepared to burn the entire reputation of the Vance family to ash if it meant getting my grandmother out of that toxic box. 3 minutes passed, then I saw it. The side gate unlatched. It was the gate that led to the kitchen entrance. The one we used to sneak out of when we were teenagers. A figure appeared in the shadows. Then 2. My father was walking fast. He was wearing his cardigan and slippers. He was carrying a small floral suitcase in one hand and supporting Nana Beth with the other. Nana looked small. She was wearing her heavy wool coat and a scarf wrapped around her head. She was leaning heavily on my father, but she was moving. I started the engine. I rolled down the passenger window. They reached the car. My father opened the door. He helped Nana into the seat. She was crying. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking as she reached for the seatbelt. My father looked at me. He looked old. The street lamp cast deep shadows under his eyes. He looked like a man who had spent 30 years avoiding a confrontation only to find himself standing in the wreckage of his own avoidance. "I am sorry," he whispered. I looked at him. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask him how he could let this happen, how he could let his wife rob his daughter, how he could stand by and watch me drown in debt while he drove a new car, but I did not have the energy. "You should go back inside, Dad," I said quietly. "Eleanor will be wondering where you are." He nodded. He looked at his mother one last time. "I love you, Mom," he said to Nana. Nana did not look at him. She stared straight ahead at the dashboard. "Goodbye, Richard," she said. He flinched as if she had slapped him. He closed the car door. He turned and walked back toward the house. He looked like a ghost fading into the darkness. I put the car in drive. I pulled away from the curb. I did not look back. The car was silent for the first mile. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the soft sniffling coming from the passenger seat. I reached over and took Nana's hand. Her skin was paper-thin and cold. "Are you okay?" I asked. She squeezed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "She took my phone, Harper," she said. Her voice was thick with tears. She came into the room and demanded it. She said I was conspiring with the enemy. She called her own daughter the enemy. "I know, Nana," I said. "I am sorry." I sat there on that bed, she continued, and I looked at the photos on the wall. Photos of you. Photos of Caleb. Photos of when you were babies. And I realized I did not know her. I raised her, but I do not know her. She wiped her eyes with a tissue she had pulled from her sleeve. "I am 74 years old," she said. "I have survived a husband who drank. I have survived cancer. I have survived the death of my friends. I will not survive being treated like a prisoner in my own son's home. You are safe now," I said. "We are going to my place. We are going to order Thai food. We are going to drink wine, and no one is going to take your phone." She let out a small, shaky laugh. "I would like that," she said. "And Harper." "Yes, Nana." "Did you really threaten to call the police?" she asked. I smiled. "Absolutely," I said. "Good," she said. She leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. "Good. She needs to know that the world does not work the way she thinks it does." I drove onto the freeway. The lights of Los Angeles sprawled out before us. It was a sea of red taillights and white headlights. I felt a weight lift off my chest. I had lost my parents. I had lost my childhood home. I had lost the illusion of a happy family. But looking at the sleeping woman next to me, I realized I had saved the only thing that really mattered. I had saved the truth. And for the first time in my life, I was driving toward a Christmas that belonged entirely to me. My apartment in Los Angeles was 600 square feet of organized chaos. By 7 o'clock in the evening on Christmas Eve, it contained 22 people, 3 dogs, and a level of noise that would have caused my mother to have an aneurysm. It was not elegant. It was not curated. It was alive. I stood in the corner of my small kitchen and watched the scene unfold. Uncle James was sitting on my counter because there were no chairs left. He was holding a slice of artisanal pizza in one hand and a bottle of craft beer in the other. He was laughing so hard his face was turning purple. Beside him, Nana Beth was holding court on my beige sofa. She was wrapped in a cashmere blanket I had bought her that morning. She had a glass of red wine in her hand and a paper plate balanced on her knees. She looked like a queen in exile who had just realized the exile was better than the throne. The air smelled of roasted garlic and truffle oil. It smelled of cinnamon from the candles I had lit. It smelled of expensive perfume mixing with the scent of wet coats and dog fur. It was the smell of freedom. I looked at the food table. It was a disaster in the best possible way. I had ordered 10 large pizzas from the best Italian place in the city. There were boxes stacked like skyscrapers. Next to the pizza was the pot of chili that a neighbor had brought. Next to the chili was a platter of sushi from Uncle Robert, who had decided to stop pretending he liked turkey. There were no matching napkins. There were no place cards. There were no centerpieces made of white hydrangeas. And nobody cared. Cousin Sarah walked up to me. She was wearing a pair of flannel pajamas with reindeer on them. She had ditched her formal dress the moment she walked through my door. "This is the best Christmas ever," she said. Her mouth was full of pepperoni. I smiled. "I am glad you made it, Sarah," I said. "I thought you were worried about the optics." She shrugged. "I was," she admitted. But then I remembered last year. Do you remember last year? When Aunt Eleanor made us all stand outside in the freezing cold for 40 minutes because the lighting was not right for the group photo. I laughed. I remembered it vividly. My toes had gone numb. Eleanor had screamed at Uncle James for blinking. "I remember," I said. "She made me hold the reflector dish." "Right," Sarah said. "And then she made us change our sweaters because the shade of red clashed with the wreath." "Who does that? We do not have to do that anymore," I said. "Look around. No photographers, no script, just pizza." Sarah clinked her plastic cup against mine. "Cheers to the end of the tyranny," she said. Across the room, laughter erupted again. Uncle James was telling a story about the time Eleanor threw a fit because a bird dared to build a nest in her wreath. He was doing an impression of her screaming at a robin. It was cruel. It was cathartic. It was necessary. For years we had all suppressed these stories. We had whispered them in corners. We had hidden our trauma behind polite smiles. But tonight the dam had broken. We were bonding over our shared survival. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message from cousin Leo. Leo was the spy. He was a 22-year-old college student who had not checked the group chat in time. He had driven straight to my parents' house in Connecticut. He was the only member of the extended family who had shown up there. I opened the message. "Get me out of here." "It is a morgue," I typed back. "What is happening? Give me a sit rep." 3 bubbles appeared, then a photo. The photo was bleak. It showed my mother's dining room table. It was set for 20 people. The vintage Royal Doulton plates were there. The crystal glasses were sparkling. The silver was polished. But the chairs were empty. There was no food on the table, just the plates. Leo sent a second text. "There is no food, Harper. The kitchen is empty. Aunt Eleanor is sitting at the head of the table drinking straight gin. Uncle Richard is hiding in the garage. Caleb is pacing around the living room looking like he wants to jump out a window. Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob are the only guests. They look terrified. They are whispering about leaving." I stared at the screen. Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob. They were distant relatives from upstate. They did not have smartphones. They did not know about the war. They had walked into an ambush. Leo sent another text. "She is ranting Harper. She is not even talking to us. She is just yelling at the air. She keeps saying, 'After everything I did.' She is throwing napkins at Dad." It is a horror show. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I could picture it. The pristine house, the expensive decorations, the silence amplified by the shouting of a woman who had lost control. It was the ghost of Christmases past. It was the nightmare I had lived for 32 years. But I was not there. I looked up from my phone. I looked at my apartment. I saw Nana Beth smiling as a neighbor's dog licked her hand. I saw Uncle James pouring more wine for Uncle Robert. I saw Sarah eating a second slice of pizza. I saw warmth. I saw connection. I saw safety. I typed a reply to Leo. "Get in your car. Drive to the airport. I will Venmo you the money for a ticket. Come here, Leo. The door is open." I put the phone down. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel gloating. I felt relief. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. My mother was sitting at a table set for 20 with nothing to serve but her own bitterness. She had the vintage plates. She had the image. She had the control. But she was starving. And here in my tiny crowded apartment we were feasting. I turned back to the room. "Who wants dessert?" I shouted. "I have 3 boxes of donuts and no self-control." A cheer went up from the crowd. I grabbed a box of glazed donuts and walked into the center of the room. This was my family now. The people who showed up, the people who laughed, the people who chose pizza over pretense. And for the first time in my life, I was not waiting for permission to be happy. It was 10 o'clock at night. The heavy rain that had been threatening Los Angeles all day finally broke. It hammered against the sliding glass doors of my balcony. Inside the apartment, the energy had shifted from a raucous party to a soft, contented hum. Nana Beth was asleep on the sofa with a half-eaten donut on her lap. Uncle James was snoring lightly in the armchair. Then there was a knock at the door. It was not the polite knock of a neighbor asking to turn the music down. It was a frantic, heavy pounding. It sounded like someone was trying to punch their way through the wood. The room went silent. Sarah looked at me with wide eyes. I stood up. I walked to the door. I checked the peephole. I saw a distorted figure standing in the hallway. The figure was dripping wet. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Caleb stood there. My brother looked like a man who had been chewed up by the machinery of his own life and spit out onto my welcome mat. He was wearing a thin windbreaker that was soaked through to the skin. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His face was pale and his eyes were rimmed with red. In his hands, he clutched a plastic container of frosted sugar cookies, the kind you buy at a gas station for $3 when you have forgotten to buy a real gift. The plastic was crushed on one side. He looked at me. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was shivering violently. "Caleb," I said. He flinched at the sound of his name. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice was cracked and rough. I did not step aside immediately. I looked him up and down. I saw the mud on his expensive sneakers. I saw the desperation in his posture. "Why are you here, Caleb?" I asked. "You are supposed to be eating filet mignon on vintage china." He let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. "There was no filet," he said. "There was no food. There was just gin. She drank half a bottle before 6 o'clock. I leaned against the doorframe. "So you left because you were hungry?" I asked. "No," he said. He looked down at the crushed cookies in his hands. "I left because she started talking about you. She was screaming at the empty chairs. She said you were a thief. She said you were trying to ruin her reputation because you were jealous of me. She said you were always the cruel one." He paused. He swallowed hard. "And I just could not take it," he whispered. "I tried to tune it out, Harper. I really did. I tried to play the game. But then she looked at me and said, 'At least I have one child who is not a liar.'" I felt a coldness in my chest. "And what did you say?" I asked. "I told her to stop," he said. I looked her in the eye and I said, "Mom, stop it. You are the liar. You took her money. You took Harper's money and you gave it to me." I stared at him. For 28 years, Caleb had been a mirror that reflected whatever Eleanor wanted to see. He had never cracked. "She went crazy," he continued. "She started throwing things. She threw a wine glass at my head. She told me to get out. She said if I was going to side with the enemy, I could leave. She said I was cut off. She said she never wanted to see me again." He looked up at me. His eyes were pleading. "I drove straight to the airport," he said. "I put the ticket on my credit card. I maxed it out. I did not know where else to go." He held out the cookies. His hand was shaking. "I brought dessert," he said weakly. I looked at the cookies. I looked at his wet face. The old Harper would have melted. The old Harper would have pulled him into a hug. The old Harper would have made him tea and told him it was not his fault. The old Harper would have fixed him, but the old Harper was gone. She had been replaced by a woman who kept receipts. I stepped back and opened the door wide enough for him to enter. "Come in," I said. He stepped over the threshold. He looked relieved. He reached out as if to hug me. I held up a hand. It was a sharp stop sign. He froze. "You can come in, Caleb," I said. "You can dry off. You can eat pizza. You can sleep on the floor because the couch is taken." "Thank you," he breathed. "Harper, I am so sorry." "Save it," I said. I walked closer to him. I looked him dead in the eye. I needed him to understand the new laws of this universe. "You are here because you are my brother," I said. "And I love you. But do not mistake this for a rescue mission. I am not Mom. I am not going to bail you out." He nodded quickly. "I know," he said. "No, you do not know," I said. "But you are going to learn. You are 28 years old, Caleb. You have lived your entire life on a scholarship funded by my trauma. You drove a car paid for by my tuition. You gambled away my safety net." "I know," he whispered. "So here is the deal," I said. My voice was calm and terrifyingly professional. "Starting tomorrow morning, you are going to get a job. I do not care if it is waiting tables or scrubbing toilets. You are going to work, and every single month you are going to write me a check." He blinked. "A check?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "You and Mom stole $58,000 from me. I doubt she will ever pay me back. So the debt falls to you. I am going to draft a repayment schedule. I will calculate the interest based on the student loans I had to take out because of your accident." I saw the fear in his eyes. It was a new look for him. It was the look of a man realizing the free ride was over. "You are serious," he said. "I have never been more serious," I said. "If you miss a payment, you are out. I will not shield you. I will not enable you. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with restitution. Do we have an agreement?" He looked at me for a long moment. He looked at the determined set of my jaw. He looked at the apartment full of people who had chosen me over his mother. He saw the power shift. He realized that the golden child was just gold-plated, but I was solid steel. "Yes," he said. "We have an agreement." "Good," I said. I took the box of cookies from his hand. "Go get a towel," I said. "You are dripping on my floor." He nodded. He walked toward the bathroom. His shoulders were slumped, but he was moving forward. I watched him go. I did not feel warm and fuzzy. I felt efficient. I felt just. I walked back to the party. I opened the box of cheap sugar cookies. I took a bite. They were dry and crumbly. But as I chewed, I smiled. I had just closed the biggest deal of my life. I had acquired a brother and liquidated a dependent. It was exactly midnight when the final guest arrived. The apartment was still warm and loud. The smell of pizza and wine hung heavy in the air. Nana Beth was asleep in the corner. Caleb was in the kitchen washing dishes as part of his new employment contract with reality. Then there was a knock. It was not frantic this time. It was sharp, deliberate, authoritative. I knew who it was before I stood up. The room seemed to sense it too. The laughter died down. The music seemed to fade. I walked to the door. I did not check the peephole. I opened it. Eleanor stood in the hallway. She was still wearing her silver sequined gown. Her makeup was intact, but her eyes were cold. She did not look like a mother who missed her children. She looked like a CEO who had just survived a hostile takeover and was looking for someone to fire. She did not say hello. She did not say Merry Christmas. "You have humiliated me," she said. Her voice was low and shaking with rage. "You have humiliated me in front of the entire family, in front of the entire town. I have people messaging me asking if I am a thief. Are you happy now, Harper? Do you feel big?" I looked at her. For the first time in my life, I did not see a giant. I did not see a queen. I saw a sad, vain woman standing in a fluorescent-lit hallway in a dress that cost more than my first car. I stepped into the doorway. I blocked the entrance with my body. "I did not humiliate you, Mom," I said calmly. "The truth humiliated you. I just turned on the lights." She recoiled as if I had slapped her. "Get out of my way," she snapped. "I need to speak to your grandmother. I need to speak to Caleb. I am taking them home." "No," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me," she said. I said, "No," I repeated. "You are not taking anyone anywhere. They are safe here, and you are not coming in." Her face turned a shade of red that clashed with her silver dress. "I am your mother," she hissed. "I gave you life. I sacrificed everything for you. You ungrateful little brat. Move." I did not move. I leaned against the doorframe. "If you want a relationship with me," I said, "if you want to ever step foot in my home again, here are the terms." "Terms," she scoffed. "You do not give me terms." "I do now," I said. "Rule number 1, you will pay me back $58,000 plus interest. You can sell the china. You can sell the car. I do not care how you do it, but you will write me a check." She stared at me, her mouth opened slightly. "Rule number 2, I continued. You will go to therapy, real therapy, not a spa day. You will sit in a room with a professional and you will admit what you did. You will apologize, not because you are embarrassed, but because you understand that stealing from your daughter is wrong." I waited. The silence stretched between us. It was heavy and thick. I saw the calculation in her eyes. I saw her weighing her pride against her family. I saw her thinking about the money. I saw her thinking about the admission of guilt. For a second I thought she might do it. I thought she might break. But Eleanor Vance did not break. She hardened. She pulled herself up to her full height. She smoothed her dress. She looked at me with a look of pure disdain. "I do not deserve to be spoken to like this," she said coldly. "I have done nothing wrong. I did what I had to do. You will regret this, Harper. You will come crawling back when you realize you need me." I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. "I think we both know that is not true, Mom," I said. She glared at me one last time. Then she turned around. She walked away down the long hallway. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. Click, click, click. It was the sound of a woman walking away from her only chance at redemption because the price of her ego was too high. I watched her until she turned the corner. Then I stepped back inside. I closed the door. Click. The lock slid into place. The sound of her heels vanished. It was instantly replaced by the sound of my apartment. I heard Uncle James laughing. I heard Sarah arguing with Caleb about which movie to watch. I heard the clinking of glasses. It was messy. It was loud. It was imperfect. I walked to the kitchen counter. I poured myself a glass of cheap wine. I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. I looked at my savings account. Balance, $8,400. It was not $58,000. It was not a fortune. It was barely enough for a down payment on a car. But as I looked at that number, I felt a lightness in my chest that I had never felt before. It was mine. Every cent of it was mine. No one could touch it. No one could drain it. No one could use it to buy a sports car or a reputation. I took a sip of wine. I looked around the room at the people I had chosen. The people who had chosen me. My mother was right about one thing. No one needed me to come home this Christmas, because I was already there. The lesson. Family isn't defined by blood, but by behavior. We are often taught that forgiveness is mandatory, that keeping the peace is a virtue even at the cost of our own soul. But real peace comes from boundaries, not silence. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from the people who only love you when you are useful. Your worth is not a currency to be spent on buying someone else's approval. Choose the people who choose you back.